Right guys, I've just gotten to the last row that I'm going to do along the edging for now. So you can see that I have started here and I've actually gone a little bit further than what I had originally planned. And the reason for that was that if I look here from where that last row was, that was nice and fluffy, I wanted to bring in a nice even rhythm to that bottom edge. So what I've done, I've realised now that I want to go around the bottom in the furry yarn. So what I've done is I've worked another round of the colour rotation and I've ended there on the stone. Now I'll leave it like that for now. The main reason being, like I said, is that I want to add that furry edge. But the reason I haven't carried on with that is because we've now got this here. So if you think about where we finished the original hexie, which is here, okay, and that's where it's ended, we then have this here which doesn't match in with the original pattern that we've got going on here. So when I come around to doing this, I will then go around with probably a single crochet just to draw this pattern in along here and along there, and I'll do it in the stone colour so that it blends in as seamlessly as I can around that edging. And then what I'll begin to do is the front row, front post double crochet and back post double crochet, and that'll then give me that nice ridged effect. And then once I've got that and the buttons on the opposite side, I'll then go around the whole thing with the fluffy yarn to draw it all together. So that's what I'll do for there, but hold your horses because we're not going to get onto that just yet. I just wanted to explain to you where I was up to. So what I want to do now, I think I mentioned it last time, is to begin our hood. Now the way I do that is that if this now is both sides of our cardigan, I count down however many stitches I want. So I've done a few of these now and I know roughly that I want to begin my hood from around about 10 spaces. So I go through the spaces like this, so I count from the shoulder where I've seamed that together. I'll then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, and then I'll pop a stitch marker in there. So once I've done that on this side, I then do the exact same thing on the other. Now we're all very individual when it comes to our sizing and where we like things to sit and where we like things to lay. So I'm not going to say you have to put a stitch marker in the 10th space and begin your hood. That's not what I want. I want you to put this cardigan on and see where, if you look in the mirror, where you would like your hood to begin. If you've got a favourite, say zip hoodie, go and pop it on and see how the hood sits and where you like it to sit, and then come back and put this back on and try to judge it around about the same space. Like I said, for me it is around about 10 spaces down. So I'll go ahead and put my stitch markers in there, and I want you to go ahead and pop them in the right space for you. If you want to just go ahead and put it into the 10 space down, that's fine, go for it. But if it doesn't sit right, then you need to bear that in mind, because like I said, we're not all the same shape, we're not all the same size. So go ahead, figure out where you want your hood to begin from and put a stitch marker in one side and match it up to the other and pop it in the other. And I'll meet you when I've got both of mine in and I've counted them up correctly. So I've gone ahead and I've put mine 9 spaces down. That's what I've decided on whereabouts I want it to sit. Okay, so what I do from there, you want to choose now what you want to do yarn wise. Now I'm going to follow on like I have been doing all the way through the cardigan, and like I said, I did go ahead and do that onto that edge part there, onto the length, sorry. I carried on in that same pattern with 4 of the coloured yarn, then onto the fluffy yarn, then onto the teal, stone, fluffy, stone. So that is my repeat as I've been going. So that's what I roughly plan to do for the hood. but instead of doing the 4, I might do 3, just so that I can get a few extra rows in, because I want to introduce a bit of the fluffy fur as well into that hood. So go and grab which yarn you want, and I'll meet you here. Right, I've cast on my yarn in that first space there where we've put the crochet up, and we will basically be working from this one right the way around across the neck and shoulders until we meet the other one on the opposite side. Now again, what I want you to bear in mind is that if you begin with a cluster of 3 here, I want you to make sure that you end with a cluster of 3 over there, okay? So let's just pop our hook in, yarn over, and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So now I want you to do 2 more double crochet into that space. And we'll be working this exactly the same as we have any other part of our cardigan in the granny stitch, and working along. So there's our first one. Like I said, don't worry if it pulls across a little bit, because when it comes down to the following row, when you're working back, that'll even itself out. And I'm carrying on with not putting any chains between any of the clusters here. It's just from one space to the next. So I'm starting with a stone literally because I want it to blend in here, so that then when I come round to do the nice edging, it will blend seamlessly across there. So don't worry too much. Again, we've got our fluffy yarn here, so it will just blend through with the rest of those. So don't worry too much about it. Just if you're going with the similar colours as I have. That's just the reason. Ordinarily, I would have gone ahead and done the colour changing yarn, but I want to begin with this, and then that'll lead me onto the colour changing yarn for the next row. Like I said, the hood is relatively easy. It just gets a little bit fiddly when you go from the front round to that space that we've done for our neck. So that's the main section that I want to run by you. And then it gets a little bit more where you have to think about it when I'm just tapering in that part of the hood to give it that rounded shape rather than the pointy. It's easy to do, it just means that I've got to think about it, that's all. And like I said, I will take you through all of that, so don't worry. Okay, so this is now starting to come closer to where that neck section is. Like I said, just carry on going as we are for now. See where it fits over there? That's where it might get a little bit fiddly. A lot of my crochet, because I don't do it from a written pattern and I do it from mind, I find what feels best for me. So I might do a part, and then if I come to it and I think, oh, I'm not too sure about that, I'll undo it and I'll try a different way. So that is basically all I'm doing, especially with the hood. I just find what feels best for me. Right, so here now is where we are, and the next space is over here. So I'm going to jump from one, and I'm going to try and keep that stitch as tight as I can so that you don't end up with a great big hole. Okay, so into there, keep it nice and tight, because that then will give us the space to work into for our next round. Okay. So you can see that originally was a corner of the work, because that's our stitch, that's where we've stitched the garment together. Okay, so let's just move our work around a little bit so we can see how we're going to work that now around the neck. So you can see now that this here originally was a side piece, or an end piece as you like, because that's your chain 3. So we're here, and I'm going to jump directly over to that chain 3. Now this work would have gone that way, working up and down. So this originally is that end space from where you'd have worked back down there. So around here, try and keep your stitches nice and tight if you can. Nobody's going to see this part, and what I tend to do, if it's feeling like the holes are too big, there's nothing stopping you going down to a stitch down here. Now I know it feels off and you don't have to do it, but I sometimes do it just so we don't have a big hole. So if you just go into one of those stitches, pull your loop through, okay, and then pull it up, go 1 and 2, and it just brings that together. So then I just work my double crochet back through the normal space, and there we have it. So nobody is going to see that space because your hood is going to be there. So if you just think that your work is stretching a bit too far, then that is what I would do, just to keep your work continuous. Now, like I said, this is where it all gets a little bit fiddly on the hood, but try not to worry too much. So here you've got a chain 3 space, again from where you've worked before. Then you've got where we've joined, and you've got another chain 3 space here. Okay, so what I would do is I would put 1 double crochet there, I would put 1 in the middle, and I'd put 1 there, like I did on some of the spaces earlier. You don't see it, and it blends in seamlessly. No one would ever know once you've done this first round. Like I said, you don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. If your work is nice and smooth and continuous there, and you've got a space for a 3, then by all means go ahead and pop your 3 in there. But this is how I do it, so this is what you're getting. Like I said, it may seem a little bit awkward to begin with, but for your middle piece, that is what I would do. Now, when you come back to that next row, don't forget then you're going to have a perfect space there, which is nice and snug. And you're going to have a perfect space here, which will be nice and snug, because you're going to go again and do that 1 double crochet. Okay, now you see how that's quite a big gap there for me, and I don't like huge gaps. So I'm going to go down into that chain 3 space below it, and you see there, this is the chain 3 space, so I've just picked it up slightly, and like I said, I'm not pulling it majorly tight, I'm just pulling it through, and then keep that as a double crochet, and then don't go back into it, go back into the chain space, okay, and do another double crochet. So yes, it may feel a little bit odd, and it's not a normal stitch as such, but it works out for me. It's just this beginning row, and then after that it'll run really smoothly, I promise. So again, we've got where I've dropped down below, okay, which is there, and then we've got the space in the middle, okay, which is here. See, there's those 3 spaces that are together there. And like I said, I know that they seem like they're far apart, but once you come to do your next round, which will then go in the middle of those spaces, it'll be absolutely fine. You'll see what I mean. Stick with me, trust the process. I know it's a little bit off, and it's not necessarily what you would normally do, but you asked for how I do it, and now you're getting it. Okay, so now we've got this section here. So what I would do is go, let's have a look in there, we'll go 1 double crochet there, 2 double crochet, and we'll go 3 double crochet in, into that space, leaning forward then, going off camera, my apologies. Okay, now this is leaving from the back and coming back down that front. Okay, so we're going to pop 3 double crochet in there just to give that space a nice continuous flow. Now I know your spaces may not be exactly the same as mine, but you can only try your best, and if you think that there's a space where you need to kind of bring it along, then just go for it. The beauty of crochet is that everything is different and everybody works differently, so you can feel it as you go, and if something doesn't feel right, stand back and try it again. Okay, so don't forget, it may seem like you've got 2 there, but it's because you've got 1 there that is really close to that stitch. So don't worry, come straight over to this next one here and do your 3 double crochet in there. Like I said, this first round is always the most sort of finicky, as I would say, basically because you've joined 2 garments together. Not everybody has that perfect seamless stitch together, and then it will guide on to the next chain 3s immaculately. Nobody has. Well, if you do, then good luck to you, but that's not how I am. So like I said, don't overthink it, don't over stress about it, but if it doesn't sit right, then take it out and work it another way. If you've got as far as you're making a hexagon cardigan, then you've got a little bit of experience with crochet, and this is just basic granny stitch. Sorry if you got the doorbell then, guys. I'm home alone today, so I just had to do a quick pause while I go and answer the door. Okay, so let's carry through there, and you're working this right back down to that next stitch marker. Like I said, it might seem a bit fiddly, but we're getting there. Okay, next one. I think part of the trick with this really is just keeping your work nice and consistent tension and working it through. Drop one there. Right, so we're up to that stitch marker there now. So remember, we began with 3 double crochets, so that is what we'll end with on this row. Right, so here I'm going to change my yarn, but if you're continuing, then all I would want you to do from here is chain 3 like this. 1, 2. Oh, she says as she drops it. It's easier than you think, you know, recording on camera. So that makes it 3, so that would count as your double crochet. I would then want you to turn your work, she says. Okay, so I'd want you to turn that work now and go directly into that space there and do 3 double crochet, and then that would be a continuous work. Then it would be, you're either starting with 3 double crochet or you're chaining 3 and going over to that next stitch. So that is all you need to do. So once you get to the end, chain 3, turn your work and begin in that second stitch there. Now I'm going to change colour here, just because of the way it's worked out, unfortunately for me. Like I said, I want to now begin with the other colour. So I'll just pull that and snip it. Pull that nice and tight. And then I will then begin on the other side where I've just told you to turn. So I'll now begin here. I'll chain 3. So yeah, so we just really carry on like this now until you've got a nice big rectangle worked up, and then as it grows and grows and it gets bigger enough, once it's the size that you want, then we start to taper in that hood. But yeah, it's not difficult to work, it's just knowing where you've got to taper is all. Right, so this is the right side of my work, so I want those fluffy bits to stay on this side. Okay, so I'm just going to go into there, chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. I'm not too fussed about these because, like I said, this is not an edge because we'll be putting our edging around it to finish it all off, and I'll just sew those in. So I've chained 3, so like I said to you, I'm coming straight over to that second chain space and doing 3 double crochet. So yeah, this works now backward and forward, so I am turning my work now, which I didn't do much of as the cardigan was building. Don't mind me, I'm just pulling up a little bit more yarn. Yeah, so these sections that we're working here now, these first 2 rows, they really sit sort of underneath your hair. So the fold, obviously the hood folds back on itself, so it's just not visible. So that's why I said don't overthink these 2 rows, because nobody's going to see them. Even you won't even spot them once it's all done. You can see now though why I wouldn't write a pattern out, wouldn't you? It'd take me forever. Okay, so we're starting to come up to those few areas now, which are around the neck. So 3 in that one. It's just where it goes from your shoulder, the front of your shoulder, up onto your shoulder, where that seam is, from sewing the arms together. So this is it now. Okay, so over to that next one. You'll see where we did those 3 earlier. So the space now is there. So put your 3 double crochet into that one. Okay, so there's your 3 again. So now we want to go in there, that space. By doing what we did on the last round, with spacing those 3 out, it just allows you to have an even space for coming back this way. Okay, so now we are here. And by just dropping down into that other stitch, it just keeps the work again nice and consistent without any large gaps, because you've got to remember these cardigans, they're not light most of the time, and especially if you've used any chunkier yarns or anything. Okay, so we've done the chain 3 in that one, so now we want in this one. Yeah, so if you've got a weighty cardigan and then you leave any sort of too big of a gap around here, then it stands to reason that when you put that cardigan on, it's going to start weighing it down. Now back to this one. Now what I will say is, as you work this up in size, don't be tempted to end the hood too soon. Make sure, if you need to, put the cardigan on and bring the hood over as if you'd already completed it to the top of your head. Make sure there's enough room, because if you stop it too soon, it just doesn't look right if the hood's too small. I'd sooner it be too big as too small. Like I said, I'm not sure how many rounds I'm going to do, but I will I will tell you when I get there how many rounds I've done. So we're nearly back down to that stitch marker now on the opposite side. And where I did drop down to the stitch below, further up, you know, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then by all means don't do it. It'll just be that you've got a slightly bigger space, that's all. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to do. It's just my way, that's all. And I don't do it every time. It's just that if it seems to be that there's a bigger stitch or bigger space, then that's just a way of utilising what you've got. Okay, so we're coming back up now to that stitch marker. So I'm just going to do 3 more in that space there. So on the opposite side we began with a 1 double crochet. So I'm going to put a double crochet into that space there, which will just make it the same as it is on the other side, and that is that row. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to now turn the work. So if you bear with me while I turn, pull some yarn up. I don't know if you've realised yet, but I do actually work on the floor. It's the only space big enough for me to hold the cardigan. So apologies. Okay. So I've chained 1 there. So I want that to be 1 double crochet. So I want to chain 2 more. So 1 and 2. Now some people don't start like that. It's just the way I do, and it's only for the one reason, which is that it helps keep that edge nice and straight for me. But if you don't want to start like that, then you can just turn your work and work 3 double crochet into this space. Now as it is, because I've already done that chain 3, I only have to work 2 double crochet into that space. But yeah, it's just the way that I do it, just to keep that edge nice and straight, so that when I come to do an edging later on, I can just work straight over that and it'll just tie it in nicely. Okay, so we're just going to do exactly the same now, working 3 double crochet into each space. So when you get to that other side, that other stitch marker on the opposite side now, you will be ending with 3 double crochet. Then you'll chain 3, turn your work, and you'll be going over to the opposite stitch again, the next stitch. So yeah, from there you'll be chaining 3 over to the next one, and it just alternates like that. If you start to lose track, then just look on these here. So you'll have a space, which is your chain 3, and then you'll have your 3 double crochet. So on the next one you want just your chain 3 and then 3 double crochet, and it just alternates as you work up. So yeah, so if you do get stuck, just look back at what you've already worked. Let's say I'm just going to take you now to where we've been working with those stitches around the back of the neck, so I can show you what they're looking like. And then I'll leave you to start working that hood up until you think it's tall enough. I will work mine off camera until I think it's big enough, and before I start making any changes to it whatsoever. I will just be working it up like this, backward and forward, until it's big enough, and at that point I will check back in with you and you can see how many rows I've worked, and then we will work that curve into the hood to shape the hood. Yeah, so I leave those stitch markers in, but the only reason I do that now is so that I can count how many rows up I'm going to work, so I can share that with you guys. So if I'm going a little bit too quick for you, by all means hit that pause button till you catch up. Okay, we're working to them sections now at the back of the neck. So I'm just pulling some more yarn. Okay, so you're working 3 in every space. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there for 1 minute. So this section here is where we did that stitch there. So when you look at it like this, it doesn't look any different, does it? Just looks nice and neat and consistent, and that is how it will continue to look as your work grows. Okay, so you don't need to worry too much about having the odd stitch here and there, because obviously we know it's there. Okay, I know it's there, but will anybody else? I think not. So carry on working that now. Like I said, I'm just coming down to that next stitch marker here, but I'm going to grow that up now off camera, just doing exactly what I've just shown you, backward, forward, until I've got enough rows. At that point I will stop, I'll count how many rows, and I'll check back in with you, and we'll take it from there to start decreasing to bring that hood in for the shape. And I'll let you know how tall I've gone with it as well. I'll measure it with my measuring tape, so just keep going with that until it's tall enough, and we'll take it from there. Right, so I've gone so far now with my hood as high as I want to go. So this here is the hood section. So this is the neck of the cardigan, and I've gone up and up, backward and forward, changing colours as I went. So I've stuck to the pattern that I've gone through in the entire cardigan, 4 of the main colour changing, and so on, which has allowed me these 2 rows of the nice fluffy yarn, which is what I wanted. Now width wise, I've gone 55 centimeters across, and height I've gone 32 centimeters. So what I wanted to really show you now was this section. Just let me zoom in one moment. Right, so this is the part that I wanted to show you. So when I come across these, and on the other side I've counted in on each side, so I've got the right number. So I want the middle space, right? But if you count along and you've only got 2 spaces, do another row, turn your work, and I can guarantee that when you do, you will be left with 1. It's just the way the pattern works. Sometimes you'll end up where you've got 2, so obviously you can't put one in the middle because that is your middle. Do the other round and you'll be left with that section there as we want. And this is the part now where we'll start bringing our hood in. So to do that, I want you to turn your work inside out. Okay, so just do that and get all your bits and pieces together. Keep going with the right yarn colour that you want, and get your hook, and we will take it from there. Okay, so I've just cast on because I've needed to change colour, but this is now where we're going to start to make that slight curve onto your hood. So get whatever yarn you're working there, and let's crack on until we get to that stitch marker that you've placed on that middle section. So I chained 3, I'm going to do 2 more double crochets into that same space, which will count as the cluster, just like we've been doing so far. It's just more or less the same, apart from when you hit that stitch marker, and even then it's not very hard, it's just 1 stitch. So keep going with me now until you hit that stitch marker. So you will need a darning needle once we finish these next 2 rounds. Sometimes I'll slip stitch it, but it depends whether I want it to be noticeable or not. This one I don't think I do, because I like the stitches to be in a nice neat section of rows, so I'm not going to separate it with a thick join. Okay, so now we're at that middle stitch, or space should I say. So this, ignore that marker there. Now get your tension nice and tight on this so that the stitch doesn't stretch, but I want you to do 1 double crochet into that stitch, into that space. Okay, again keep that tension nice and tight, and then yarn over and into the next space. Again keep the tension tight because you don't want that to stretch. Okay, and continue with 2 more so it's a normal stitch. Okay, so let me just explain there what we're doing. So now we've got that 1 stitch there, we'll continue on, turn your work and come back to this space. Now when you do, again you're just doing 1 double crochet and then over to the next space. So I'll show you that anyway, but yeah, so for now I just want you to continue on, turn your work, and I will meet you back at that space. I'm just coming back up to that stitch there, so I'm going to do the same again. I'm coming right over here, keep your tension nice and tight, and go into the top of that double crochet there, pull that through, do that one. Now over to the next stitch, again keeping your tension nice and tight, and do 3 double crochet. Now if I just show you there quickly on what that's doing, and it is basically taking off that corner and giving a more rounded effect. So I will then pull this together into a square, you see, and you've got that rounded edge there. So I will go now to the end of this row, and then I will cut off and we'll start to sew it together. So keep going now until you get to the end and cut your yarn and get your needle ready. Right, so just remember that when you do cut off your work, leave a nice long strand, which allows you then to work your way back along your work. But here is the part where we have just created that curve. Now I will say, once you've weaved your way back through and you come to here, if your tension is not quite as tight as mine, there's nothing stopping you running your hook at your needle just in and out of there a little bit, as long as your yarn's a good match for it. And just like it before, just pull some of those loops through and just bring that in a little bit further if it's not sitting quite right. But as you can see there with mine, there's no huge gaps, it just ties in with the rest of the work. So as long as you keep your tension nice and tight, you shouldn't run into too many problems. Now you might have to bear with me a little bit because the yarn that I've ended on is the one that once you've weaved through a few times, it starts to pull away like felt. So just bear with me if I need to stop and get some more yarn. So yeah, so all I'm going to do now is just start weaving through, just like I did when I was attaching the 2 pieces last time when I did the 2 halves together. And I make sure that I use the yarn to sew it with, not my tension as such. If you pull it too tight, again, wool just has a, well, especially this type, it just either snaps off or it pulls your work too tight. And like I said, if you do feel like you've got a little bit of a gap, just go back through a little bit and just pull it in a little bit more. And make sure that you're doing it on the wrong side of your work, just to keep any of your stitches nice and hidden and tidy. And we're just going to do this all the way along. And once we've done this bit, we'll leave the hood alone for a little bit then, because when we come along to do our edging, we bring our edging in around the hood as well, which one makes your hood a little bit bigger, and 2, it just ties the whole piece together. So we've done our length. The next will be our arms, and then we'll do the edging. If you're enjoying the videos, do give me a like. I would appreciate it. I don't earn money for the videos, I'm just doing it purely to help other ladies and gentlemen like myself. So if you wanted that nice seam that you can get by slip stitching all the way across, you can do that too. It's quite simple, and it will leave a nice raised edge along the top of it. I did that with my last hexagon cardigan, the one that is the colours of Halloween, more like the wicked colours. You can find that on my shorts, or you can find it on my Instagram, Crochet with Love 101, just to see what I mean when I say that. Okay, so we're coming to the inner part now where we brought our hood in, which is here. So like I said, if you'd like to, there's nothing stopping you just weaving through a little bit of your yarn just to bring in that back section. There's also nothing stopping you putting a tassel on, which should make it a little bit more fun as well, if that's the sort of thing you like. And by doing that, you can't see it, but it's just brought that little bit in down there. And if you wanted to, you could even bring some further down. I may as well do it now, seeing as I've started. Yep. And then back up. And that then clears that right up for you, doesn't it? Looks like one piece without any problems. So yes, all I need to do now is cut that off, and for now that will be our hood finished. Like I said, we've got a bit more to go on it, but that will be further along when we come to do our edging, and that's the bit that brings everything together. So just knock that off nice and tightly, and that is that bit. So if we turn that the right way round, this is now our hood, and instead of having that squared edge, we've just got a nice little curve on it, which is a nice touch. I think that's the right side, so you can't see any of our stitching, and it blends in nicely with the colour coordination as well. So that's that part done. Now what I want to talk to you about now, quick change of subject, I'm sorry, is our arms. Okay, so when we finished sizing our hexagon and we didn't want our arms to get any longer or wider, we stopped. Now the point that we stopped at was here. Okay, so I've just carried on with it just for the purpose of showing you before we start on the other of what I want it to look like, and this is how I want it to start looking. So I'm working it in the exact same pattern, flow of colours down the arm as well. Now I'm not very long in the arm, or the leg actually, as we were speaking about it, but yeah. So unfortunately, where I left it was on a stone colour, so I had to begin the arm on the fluffy one, which was a bit of a bad plan, but it worked out eventually. Like I said, I just had to be a little bit more careful, because the only point that you run into any issues here is if you put too many stitches in, so, or you don't put enough in, because it'll either go wider or it'll go smaller. And with the way I work this particular cardigan, I don't do the type of cuff that brings it down and we have to start decreasing, which is why I stopped a little bit earlier, because I didn't want this to go any wider than what it already was, because I didn't want the added work when I got down to the bottom of trying to decrease. So to keep it nice and smooth and even, that's what I did. I stopped that early so that I wouldn't have to do too much with this, and it would sit nicely around my cuff without being too wide. And it isn't too wide, it's just about right. So all I did with the last one that I did like this is I brought it down until I was ready, and then when I came to the end I made sure that I finished on the stone colour, and I did several rows of the fluffy just to give it that nice edge, and it worked out perfectly. So if you're doing what I am and you've ended up landing on a fluffy yarn where you've got to begin doing the arm again, go and pick it up if that's how you've landed with mine. If not, just get whatever yarn you are working with and we will start to attach on to the other arm. So I'll show you how I began. Like I said, don't worry too much about that one. It was just so that I could show you. So I'm sorry if I got a little bit ahead. Right, so this is the, let me see, let me just get it set out properly. Right, so this is the arm I'm going to be working on. So it's this part where you've got to be wary, because when you work that, you can tend to put in too many stitches when really you don't want that, because that'll make your work go wider. So what I tend to do is I work here, but then like I did with the hood earlier, I will work one stitch here, two, and then a three, so that you've got one there instead of it being, because bear in mind when this was being worked around, that would have been a corner. So you don't want to work it as a corner, you want to work it as one cluster in there. So what I tend to do when I'm beginning the arm here, I will look here and I will make sure that I start underneath here, and that way then as you come around it doesn't necessarily draw your eye to that, because if you begin there then it's going to draw your eye to it, I can promise you, because obviously you've already attached, so you'd then be casting on again, then trying to go through it without it all going higgledy-piggledy and not looking perfect. So begin your work underneath there. I mean, if you don't want to do that then fair enough, don't, but I'm just telling you how I work it. So like I said, unfortunately for me, I didn't think about it at the time, but I ended that row on the stone. So to carry on in that pattern means I've got to begin on the fluffy, which is a bit of a pain for me, just because I'd as soon as showed you in the other yarn, but it is what it is, so we're going with it. So bear with me if I keep pulling at pieces, because fluffy yarn can be a little bit of a pain when you first start. So like I say, anywhere underneath, pull my yarn through. As I told you before, when I start off, especially with this, I give it a good knot to begin with. I'm going to give it 2 just to be on the safe side, because beginning with this can be a bit slippery. So again, you just work it like you've worked every other cluster of the cardigan. There's nothing special about it. It's just carrying on from what we've already been working. So there's your first 3. Back in for a double crochet. And like I said, a lot of it with this yarn, it's not so much what you can see, it's what you can feel. And again, everybody's arms are different lengths, and I'm sure your arm is probably much longer than mine. So if you're working like me and you are going in the colour coordination similar to mine, then again, you'll have to try and work that out with where you finish your yarn. So as you're working, keep trying it on so that you know that you're getting to the right size, the right length. You don't want it too long, but you certainly don't want it too short unless you're planning on a 3/4 length. Okay, so just keep going with that now until we get to that join around the other side. Sorry if you can hear anything in the background, the kids are playing outside and the windows are open because we're finally having a bit of sun. That makes a nice change, doesn't it? I mean, in a way, starting the stitch with this one isn't actually that bad, apart from the fact that I've dropped it, because where that join is, you can't actually see it at all with the fluffy yarn, so that is a bonus, I suppose. One bonus to starting with it. I mean, one thing I will say with this yarn, don't try and work it too tight, because if you do, that's when it can end up a bit knotty and more difficult to work with. Just try and keep your stitches nice and smooth. Just turning the arm round, because we're just coming up on that now. Okay, so we're here. So what I want to do is do one double crochet in there. I'm going to try and do one in the centre there if I can, because I have stitched that together rather well. Okay. Keep that piece in if you've left a bit of a tail from attaching. Okay, and then where this one is, we're going to do one more double crochet in there. And so it's just like we did with the hood, and it will just mean that when you come on to your next row, you'll do there and you'll do one here, because we're then going to jump over to this space. And trust me, I've worked like this on every hexagon cardigan that I've done, and I have done a few, and it just blends it through nice and evenly. I never end up with a cardigan looking off in the arm, or I haven't so far, should we say. So now we basically just carry on like we have done with our work all the way through the cardigan. Obviously I'm ending because I'm changing yarns, but if you're not, then you don't need to cut off and restart on another colour. But obviously as I work my way around, I will stop when I reach the other end, the other side of this work, and I'll change colour and I'll be back onto the stone colour, because that's what I've done all the way through the rest of the cardigan. Super simple, it's just it looks more difficult because of all the swapping and changing of the yarn. Just gonna turn that arm round so we've got better access. So yeah, so we're coming up right to the end now anyway on that one. So like I've done with every other round, I slip stitch with this a few times, and then I knot it and tie it as a little bit more, just because if it undoes, if it comes a little bit loose with where you've knotted it, it's really super silky soft, this yarn, and it'll unravel itself, or it'll unravel itself a little bit, but not enough for you to make it look great. So make sure that when you cut it, you give it a good knot. Bear with me while I just pull up my scissors, won't be a moment. There we are. Yeah, so because obviously the stitches are how they are with those spaces, I can just slip stitch across and nobody had ever noticed that I've done it, which again is the beauty of this yarn. So yeah, just pull it through and pull it nice and tight, and then I do it again. And pull it through. So it's just the way I like to just be a little bit safe with this yarn. It only slightly did it with me once before, so it's just edging my bets and making sure I just double check it. So from there we will be doing our stone colour, which was this one. I know what I was going to show you actually, just before we carry on with that. I was going to show you what the hood looked like, wasn't I, from the back? You know, where I dropped down in them stitches. So, here it was. And it is, obviously I know it's there, so I know that one's there. But, in all honesty, it's not all that different, is it? It's just where you've attached that very first row, and everything else is smooth as can be. So like I said, that one stitch there can be a little bit awkward, and I may have come a little bit further that way than what I should have. So ideally, I could have brought that a little bit further that way. But in all honesty, who's going to notice that, really? I mean, unless you're like super duper, oh my God, stuck on things having a perfect place. I mean, let's face it, it's not the end of the world, is it? So, back onto our arm. So we will be carrying on, like I've just said, start under here where possible. I always just start a few rows back from where I finished, just so that you go over that area and you know where it's at. You don't lose it in the scheme of things as you're working. So again, just knotting on nice and tightly. I mean, when you change your colours every few rows, it always pays to just have that extra little bit of security with it, doesn't it? Okay. So pull up 3. And 2 more double crochet into that same space. Now when I've worked all the way around, I do like what I did before as well, where I start to pull the yarn through, just because any little pieces that get stuck on the inside, you want all that to be on the outside where you can see it all nice and fluffy, don't you? So once you've got this row done, just go back and fluff out that little bit of work that you can pull to the front rather than the back. Now once I've finished this cardigan, you probably won't see me very much over the coming months, just because I'm going in for some bowel surgery, so I'll be out of action for a few weeks. But every time I end up in hospital with something like that, I always end up planning what I'm going to do next time I quit home. So the last invention when I came out of hospital was the cat basket, which turned out really fun, didn't it? So yeah, so what's this space? Okay, we're back at that spot now. So, like I said, if you can't see the space, put your finger through it. Okay, that's that one. And now we're coming over to this one. See, and because your stitches aren't directly over that join, because you're working like this now, it stops your eye going to that space, to that join. Especially with it being a different colour as well. Now, if I was working a stone colour that I'm working with now directly over that beginning colour, which was the same colour, you probably wouldn't see it too much, but it would still be there because you wouldn't have the fluffy hiding it. So in a way, it does kind of pan out. But yeah, it just stops your eye going under there, wondering what's different along there. So yeah, you can't tell at all. So now just work your way back round to where you started. Now if you're not changing colour, then all you basically need to do is chain 3, turn your work, and work your way back. Super simple. And if you want to know more about decreasing, you can always look back on one of my past videos where I decrease to attach a more narrow cuff. I'm just going to pull that round. Yeah, so going forward now, every row is just going to be the exact same thing. Just going to be going around like this with your clusters of 3 again. Like I said, what you need to do really now, if you're going to do the same as me and you're using a fluffy yarn, then that's what I use as a cuff. I will go around and do a few rows of that at the very end. And I will probably just try my best to end on the stone and then do 2, maybe 3 rounds of the fluffy yarn just to finish it off, just to give it that nice touch. Like I said, I have used it on the red one that I did a little while ago, so if you want to look back at that on my shorts, you'll see what I did with that one as well. So I'm trying to do basically the same as the red one because I got so many questions asking how I achieved it, so I'm trying to keep it as more like that as I can. Right, so I'm back to the join there. So as I've been doing before, I'll slip stitch into the first one, second one, and then into that one. And like I like to do all the way along, I like to finish in a chain space, and the reason I do that is so that when it comes to the next yarn, it then covers up that tail that I'll leave there to join it all in. So it's me sewing it in at a later date, doesn't it? I mean, let's face it, who likes that bit? So yeah, so as I come to the next one now, obviously I'll go into there and I will put that behind and I'll crochet over it and then I'll snip that last bit off. So yeah, so that's it basically, guys. It just keeps going like that until it gets to the length that you desire, really. Like I said, I will go around now and start picking at these bits just to make sure that they're all on the outside and not the in. But yeah, so our cardigan is really coming together now. We've just got to finish the length on the arms, and then the edging will come next. But yeah, so if I was finishing that now, that's the one that I started a little bit earlier, then yeah, I would carry on like I've been doing. I've still been introducing the other colours in between, but as you know, I do 4 of the multicoloured and then I just do 1 of every other. So I've now started, I'm on the 4, so I might do 4, might do 3. I'll see how it feels, because like I said, I've not got a lot of length to work with when it comes to this. So I try and get as many sections in as I can to introduce the fluffy area. But yeah, so once I get to that end, I will try my best to end on that stone colour, so that then I can come in with the fluffy and do 2 to 3 rows of that fluffy yarn, and that'll just finish that off nicely. And then like I said, we'll start on the edging, which will be a front row, back row double crochet, and then we will put some more fluff after that as well to give it a nice finish. But carry on as you are for now, increasing on the arm. I'll come back to you when I've got both lengths the same and show you how I'm doing, and then we will take it from there with the edging. So good luck, stick with me, and if you've got this far, thank you very much. Hit that like button.